drug industry is one of the worst when it comes to marking up their products, and they're able to get away with this because of a special deal they've worked out with our government. But other countries are fighting back against big drug price gouging, and I have Seth Katz here to explain how they're doing that. Seth, Big Pharma has been on the march all over the United States, basically trampling consumers, trampling the FDA, trampling anybody who is a critic of theirs at all. What's happening throughout the world? Are they getting away with those same things throughout the world?
You know, Pat, they're really not. In some countries, the regulatory agencies stand up to them much more than the FDA does. The governmental agencies are standing up to them much more on multiple fronts, whether it's their patent protection or whether it's their marketing or whether it's just the approval process. But it seems for some reason here in the U.S., the most developed nation in the world, we lag behind on many of those basic issues.
We used to see these corporations going in third world countries, whether it's India, whether it's South America, South Africa, and they would go in and they would do experiments by the thousands. They would absolutely leave people lame and crippled and dead sometimes with their experiments. And the way they did that was they would spread around graft money through the leadership in a place like India. Has that changed, or what's going on in India with pharma right now?
You know, in India, the way that they're taking on Big Pharma is by challenging their ability to get patent exclusivity. Recently, with regard to Gleevec, which is a drug that costs about $80,000 a year here for a patient to use it, the Indian government denied Novartis's patent protection so that they had the exclusive right to sell it. And it was based on a decision that it really all Gleevec is the combination of two other pre-existing drugs. And what's happened there is it's opened the competition up, and now patients there can get what costs $80,000 a year here for an entire year of use of the drug for about $1,000 for, in essence, what they're calling a high-quality generic version of the same product. So they're really taking on the pharma's ability to get their patent exclusivity and the ability to charge the high prices that we all know get charged. And we all know that the companies will charge what the market can bear. And as you and I know from experience in many, many cases, the pharma companies charge more in the U.S. than in any other company in the world. Why? Because they can.
Okay, so in the United States, we would love to say, okay, well, that person that's paying $80,000 a year ought to be able to get, I mean, today with internet, you ought to be able to order the stuff from anywhere in the world, places like India. If you could get it, rather than paying $80,000, you ought to be able to pay $1,000. But the pharmaceutical companies even interfered with that, and this administration and every administration basically has gone along with them on that. They've said, no, you can't order overseas. I mean, talk about that a little bit.
That's true, Mike, but the one thing that has to come to a head is if the drugs that the pharmaceutical products can't come here from overseas, at what point does it make it economically feasible to go there and get them and then bring back your own self-use? Certainly if you're talking about a difference of $79,000, you can buy a lot of round-trip airfare to go save that kind of money.
Well, aren't they trying to close the loophole on that? In other words, what used to be you could go to Canada, you could buy the drugs in Canada, you go to Mexico, and then the pharmaceutical companies came up, first of all, with this PR scam where they said, gee whiz, you shouldn't buy the drugs in Canada because they're not as good. Truthfully, they were exactly the same thing. But in Canada, a drug that maybe cost 10 cents to manufacture, they only sold for $2. But that same drug that only cost 10 cents to manufacture here, they sold for $60. So, right. I mean, those numbers are pretty exact, too, the markups that they have in the United States. Do you remember the deposition, Seth, that we took on a case, and we asked in that case, why is it that you're charging more? I think it was 6 times the amount that they were charging in places like Germany and Asia. Why are you charging more in the United States? And their answer was, because we can. Do you remember that?
It's a common refrain in many of the depositions you and I have worked on together, Mike, is that they'll charge what the market can bear. I mean, if you did some research in getting ready for today, the cost of Celebrex for 100 tablets cost Pfizer 60 cents to make 100 tablets. And what's the consumer price? A little over $130. Claritin, again, 100 tablets. Cost of all those active ingredients, 71 cents. Cost to the consumer, $215. Lipitor, 100 tablets. Cost to make it, $5.80. Consumer price, $272. That's a 4,696%
Seth, let me ask
markup.
You, has the industry been reined in at all under this administration? Has the drug industry been reined in at all?
It doesn't appear that they've been reined in at any level under this administration, whether it's off-label promotion prosecutions, and they've happened, and they've had large settlements, but it hasn't stopped the industry. Why? Because at these markups of 4,700%, there's a lot more money to be made by selling the product than by paying fines.
Yeah. So in other words, they can pay a $450 million fine and still make a lot of profit. Well, look, Seth, thank you for joining me. This story just continues to get crazier and crazier. The longer the pharmaceutical companies, the longer they spread around money, the tougher it is for the consumers. Thanks for joining me.
As always, a good time seeing you, Mike.
That's it for this week's Ring of Fire, but you can keep up with us throughout the week online at ringofireradio.com or on Twitter at Ring of Fire Radio and on Facebook. I'm Mike Papantonio, and we'll see you next week right here on Ring of Fire.